In this video, I'm gonna give you the #1 foolproof way on how to stay broke forever. So if you don't ever wanna make any money or keep any money that you earn, stay tuned. But let's talk about all the mistakes I made when I was coming up. Like I was thinking about it before. We're gonna start all the way back in the day, let's say around 1999, when I was around 17 to 18 years old. And I can remember it clear as day. I wanted a new DVD player, and then I just got like a pre-approved application for a Capital One credit card, and I was just so anxious to like order something off the internet and have it delivered to my house. Let me know in the comments if you remember a time when it was like exciting to order something on your little compact Presario computer and have it delivered to your house. So my whole thing, I think my credit card was either $300 or $500 limit, and my DVD player was probably a couple $100. So I bought that DVD player and whatever else, ran that thing straight up, and then I wasn't making enough money to pay it off. Like nobody taught me into this financial stuff. That's why I'm here. Like my family didn't have that financial knowledge. I don't think my mom had ever had a credit card up to that time, or anybody else in my family, and I was the youngest. So I didn't know any better. I'm somebody who always experimented. So I jumped in and took their credit card, ran it up, and messed up my credit, you know, by not paying it off, by not really understanding and getting in over my head. Because at the time, I think I was working like part-time at a video game store, making absolutely nothing and just blowing all my money on dumb stuff. And I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, oh, I'll just pay them off for whatever. I'm sure they don't mind. And of course, that didn't work out that way. And then fast forward to probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later when I joined the United States Air Force and I was in basic training. Mind you, this is a very scary time for everybody. Like you're walking on eggshells. Like remember the drill sergeants with the hats in there, listen here, airman, and screaming at you. And I remember like getting singled out and be like, hey, Raglan, get down to the SEAL's office now. And I'm just like, holy crap, they're gonna kick me out. I didn't know what I did, but I knew it was bad. And it was a very nice person who was obviously from outside the organization and just a normal like financial officer or something. It was like, hey, we ran your credit report, we did your background and checking. It looks like you owe Capital One some money. Do you plan on paying that? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. Straight away. And my first little checks from the military ended up going to pay off that debt. But I'm pretty sure it was already too late. It was already in collections. So that was one big mistake, was over leveraging credit cards when I was 18 years old. That messed my credit up. Don't get me wrong, I did it again though. I didn't learn my lesson, because we come back around full circle. Around the same time when I was getting out of the military, I did the same daggum thing, ended up having to rinse and repeat. And that's over 10 years later, just really getting that shiny object syndrome. And then it was the opposite problem when I left the military, because I was working as a contractor making a ton of money, and I moved to a different country and I was like, no big deal, I'm never gonna need it. And actually I didn't really need it and ended up fixing it a couple years ago, and it wasn't a huge deal, but it would have mattered during that window while I was in. I straightened out my first couple of years, and I was able to get my score up pretty decent while I was actually serving, and I was able to get a house and do my investments, and it didn't really bother me. So it was okay, but that was a big mistake. But let's talk about in between the start to the end in my military career and some of the other mistakes I made. I was lucky enough that I didn't get caught up in the 2008 financial crisis, because during that time I was spending a lot of time overseas. So I didn't really worry about settling down and having a house. I just lived in the military dormitories and it was fine. Then by the time I came out and back to America, it was in late 2008, so I didn't really get caught up in that. But what I did get caught up in was, I don't know if you guys remember the brand new Camaros when they ended up coming out, right? The ones that was in Transformers. Like, I had never had a brand new car, and I spent so much time overseas dealing with all that crap and sacrificing. So I was like, you know what I deserve? I deserve a brand new Camaro. So I remember for my birthday, I was hell bent on going in there on my birthday and being like, yep, give me that Camaro. I'd already got pre-approved from my bank. I love negotiating and debating. So I went in and I negotiated everything. I was pre-approved, got a good deal on the car, but my credit wasn't perfect. It was decent. I think at that time it was around 650. And keep in mind, for people who don't know about credit scores, they can go anywhere from, I don't know, 300s to up to 850ish or so. So I was like average or below average on credit because of some of those mistakes I made before, but get enough to get the car, but not get enough to get the best rate. So I went in and I actually got that car, and I remember like it was super exciting to get it. I customized it, blacked it out, gold rims, like it was a sweet car. I really loved it. But then when I thought about like my living, like I was living in Vegas at the time, and I remember going out with my friends and wanting to have fun, but every time the freaking payment came around, it bit me right in the butt. Like I want to say it was $630. I want to say a month. Keeping in mind my paycheck was about $1,800 every 2 weeks then, and then I think at the time I had bought a house, so my mortgage was around 1120, if I'm not mistaken, 1120, 1200. So looking at that margin, like that car payment was a huge chunk, and then there was another couple $100 on the actual insurance because I was younger at the time, and then I had all my other household bills because my partner at that time was a stay-at-home person. So it was just really a horrible decision to get a new car. And even to this day, I'm like, oh, I really want to get a Tesla. But luckily, I'm somebody who learns from not only my mistakes, but the mistakes of others. So I know I'm not going to make that mistake again. Like I think cars are just a depreciating asset. And people got lucky during the times of the bat virus when they were able to get cars and then have them for the same value. We ended up getting a family car around at the same time. We could sell it right now for close to the same value, but that still isn't a reason to buy a car because it is a depreciating asset. So that was a big mistake that I made as well, trying to keep up with the Joneses and just impress people, and being a young dude that felt like he deserved something and ended up putting myself in a bind and really being behind because I wanted that flash car. Like I think about it now, when I see young people riding around in new cars, I'm like, that's cool, you young, do that. But it's way smarter to actually invest that money into ETFs when you don't know anything about the market, then eventually learn more by watching channels like this to actually invest and have some smarter strategies when I look at it. But if you're watching this and you're somebody who's thinking about making those same mistakes, like it's all wrong. If you did it, fix it. Just don't do it again. I think that's like the #1 wealth killers is having those payments. But another thing I think about now that I still struggle with is monthly payments. Like I'll see a big number and I'm just like, oh, I just want to go in and I don't want to pay the whole year. I'll just pay it off every month. But then when you're paying those monthly bills, you're just like, oh, this is trash. So monthly payments are another thing that's going to keep you poor. But then you have the buy now, pay later stuff. It's so many traps that's going to keep you poor as well. I'm not one of those people that think like the old school people say, oh, don't use credit, don't use buy now, pay later. I'm like, leverage that stuff, but use it to get an asset that's actually not depreciating. So we're not going to get into some of the strategy, but there's some different ways that you can take that bad debt and actually invest into other things that can become an asset to you, right? I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you, what to do, but there are ways out there. And as we dive deeper into this channel, we're going to talk about those things, because what I would have done if I could do it all over again is that I would have actually just invested that money into some ETFs or mutual funds and stocks, because I seen Apple at a low price. Because I've been looking at stocks for 20 years. I just was never smart enough to make those decisions. I was putting my money elsewhere, but I had an opportunity to invest in Apple, Google. I remember when Facebook first came out, I want to say their IPO was like 20 or 30 bucks when it first dropped, and sitting in the office having a debate about whether or not I should invest. But I couldn't see the future. I'm just like, oh, it's just a random site where you can keep up and stalk your exes and stuff on. So I didn't even see the future, and I wasn't smart enough to invest in Facebook. I remember going to the library when I was younger, and we had Ask Jeeves, Lycos, Dogpile, and this one weird one called Google, right? I didn't look up the shares then because I don't even know if I had a computer at home, but if I had a time machine, I would go back and invest in all those companies. But remember, the best time to start investing in my case was 20-something years ago, and the next best time is today. So don't get discouraged and live in the past. I'm always trying to measure the gain and look back on how far I've came in life and not measuring the gap that's in between where I want to go. That's my #1 goal of staying happy. Like, I don't compete with anybody but myself. But those were just some of my biggest failures from back in the day. I hope you learned something. If you're sitting here and thinking about those things, think twice. Like, phone a friend that actually has the right advice. Don't get me wrong, I did talk to some people, but they didn't know what the hell they were talking about and didn't have any financial knowledge. So they helped me and gave me that encouragement to make those bad decisions. But remember, our goal here is to help you break those generational wealth curses so you can leave more behind for your family when you die than just debt. Until next time, it's your boy Michael T. Ragland, and I am out. Thanks for watching. Peace.